Ego lifting is 100% based, and I would honestly recommend it. Now, this is not a joking video. I'm not going to say at the very end, just kidding. I genuinely think that most people should ego lift if their goal is to build muscle and or strength. Now, what exactly is ego lifting? Ego lifting is lifting a weight that is going to be too heavy for you to handle through what probably is a shorter range of motion or to some degree manipulated so that you can quote unquote lift the weight. I said it's a pretty fair definition of ego lifting. Now, the reason why I think the ego lifting is a good thing in some instances, and I would say a good thing in more than half, I'd say it's more beneficial than it is negative, is number one, it's high intensity. You see anybody ego lift and they're going all out, which is awesome for building strength and building muscle. And number two, it is forcing the upper limits of what they can do, as well as getting connective tissue, ligaments, tendons, muscles as well, getting them used to that weight. So an issue a lot of people have with really any exercise, but an issue a lot of people have is they'll do a bicep curl with 40 pounds for 8 reps, and they can only go up to 45 for 2. And it's like, are you really going to do a set of 2 on bicep curls? Probably not. But could you ego lift for 5? Could you ego lift for 4? And a lot of people would say, oh, that's bad, it's bad form. Yeah, if you're ego lifting as your sets, like every single week you go in the gym and every exercise you ego lift on, that's pretty impractical and you're definitely going to get injured. If you strategically use ego lifting to help yourself get accustomed to the weight, to push the limits, to really see what you can do, to get used to holding the weight in the eccentric, to get used to holding the weight in lockout and flexion and extension, I think it's great. I really do think it's great. I think it's better, if you're scared to bench 225, I think it's awesome to have a spotter, slam it off your chest. You don't want to break any ribs, but slam it off your chest. Have a spotter help you up, have your butt come off the bench, and get used to lifting 225. It's not as daunting once you've lifted it. Now, deep down in your head, you know that you can't lift it for good form, but you've checked off that box. You have moved 225. A lot of momentum, butt came off the bench, spotter kind of helped you at the end, but you've lifted 225. And I think to some degree for a lot of people, it's not even really the connective tissue, which I do think that's pretty important. I think getting used to holding the weight or having on your back or leg extending it, I think getting used to that is pretty important under a controlled manner. I don't think you should be ego lifting if you can get injured. I wouldn't ego lift with no spotter and no safeties. I mean, then you might die. But assuming you were able to fail, or that fail's not even needed for that lift to stop it, I think occasionally on certain exercises, if you're in a plateau, or even if you're not in a plateau, but you really want to push the limits, I think it's perfectly fine to go all out and use some momentum, slow eccentrics, just really, really push the limits. I think there needs to be more ego lifting when it comes to bodybuilding training as well as strength training. And a lot of people, at the end of the day, they are obsessed with this science-based, and I think science-based lifting, it is legit. Full range of motion, exercises to target the muscle and lengthen position where it's the most difficult. That's all good, and I love it. But if you are so uptight, you got your panties in a wad about lifting with perfect form, it's going to be tough to ever progress. If you're never willing to break the most perfect, like meditation level form, you may never progress. So you'll probably never get injured because you never push yourself. I think a lot of people too, they view it as anything that is somewhat risky or dangerous. And once again, I'd mentioned I wouldn't do anything stupid. You have to evaluate the situation. I would have some precautions in place to fail a lift, but even getting injured, if you've lifted for 10 years and you've never gotten injured while lifting, I'm going to doubt that you've ever lifted. Now, I'm not saying that you need to blow out your rotator cuff or, throw a hip out or something insane. Like, I'm not saying you need to be out of lifting for a year. But if you've never tweaked your wrist or had a little bit of a shoulder bump where you couldn't lift for a month, It's like if you've never been injured while lifting, I'm going to assume that you're not lifting all that hard. You probably haven't maximized your gains. And the guy that was lifting hard and did ding his shoulder and did ding his ankle and did stub his finger and broke his toe on a drop plate, although he had less lifting time than you because he was injured for a couple months, he was lifting so much more intense that even though he lifted, 9 years and 6 months versus your 10 years, he built more muscle because he was training harder.